So my name is Joseph Adetoyinbo. I usually say, I have a background in engineering. I was this, kind of guy who really loved analysis and a lot about, mathematics and stuff like that. So I did my undergrad in engineering, and I thought I was going to go on to do very fancy stuff like robotics and the likes. And as I was getting out of NYSC, a friend just told me about an opportunity to work with one of the big fours. And it was like, oh, I like the work I'm doing. It's very, analytical. You sit down with businesses, you solve problems. And I was like, okay, this sounds good. I can make money on the side, so I can, make enough money and go for my master's back then. So I decided to join PwC in their graduate training program. I did that for 2 years, and I really loved it. I love the experience. I did transaction services, so it was more like buy side, sell side, due diligence type of work. So I did that for 2 years, and in those 2 years, my mindset really changed. I was really like, I wanted to do more of this. I wanted to work with businesses, to grow businesses, to see more of how you actually go from concept to execution. So I did that for 2 years, and I just really wanted to be more involved in execution type of work. So I joined Accela, which is a gas and power infrastructure development company. I did that for 3 years, really enjoyed the process. I really enjoyed what I did, looking for new gas and power infrastructure deals in Africa and West Africa, which was just really interesting. But for me, I think at that point, after 3 years, I just saw myself, becoming very industry focused, very gas and power specialist. And I was like, no, this needs to change. I really need to, go back to that initial concept of helping different businesses across different sectors to kind of make sense of what they do. Mm-hmm. So I at that point, I decided, I wanted to get out of this. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to seek international experience, and decided to go for my MBA. And I eventually settled at London Business School, and I've been at London Business School for the last 21 months now. And at London Business School, I've done a variety of things. I've moved from doing investment banking to private equity to consulting, and it's been a fantastic experience. And if you have questions later on about other things apart from GMAT, I might be able to answer that based on my experience. But yeah, that's me in a few words.
Yes, can you hear me? So I was muted for a while there. Yeah. So good. Thank you very much for that introduction. I myself have a background in engineering, and I can understand how you start off doing engineering, wanting to break the world and rebuild it, and you realize that maybe you have to do that some other way. So Sam, over to you. Can we just learn more a bit about you?
Okay. So I grew up in Ghana, born and bred in Ghana. I attended the University of Ghana, where I did bachelor's degree in business administration, accounting. And so right after the university, I got a job in this boutique investment banking firm to do accounting for them. And so that was my first experience with an organization that was doing basically finance, but I was doing accounting. But after about a year in accounting, I don't know, no offense to the accountants in here, but for me, it was quite monotonous. It didn't seem like, I struggled dealing with, historical stuff. And especially when I saw people whose work had more impact on the company going forward, like accounting was not appealing to me at all. So that was when I decided to kind of do more research on what they were doing in the company. I'm talking about the associates and the analysts. And so usually, very often, right after work, I used to close early. So after work, I would sit by them, check what they were doing. The financial models impressed me a lot. And so I started doing my own research on finance. I think one of the guys gave me a website, I think Wall Street Mojo or something like that. So I started learning more about financial modeling and company valuations and all this stuff. And after about a year in accounting, there was an opening for an analyst in the financial advisory department. So I told the managing director that I believe I can do the work. And so he gave me this. The company was doing an IPO in Ghana. He said I should come up with a valuation for the company. I came up. It was quite close, so he was a bit impressed. And then that was how I was moved from accounting department into the financial advisory department. I worked in the financial advisory department for almost 4 years. I left the company as an associate. But after some time in the firm, I realized I had kind of plateaued in, my knowledge. I had built so many financial models in my life. I was looking forward to something more, being at the forefront. And around that time, I realized that I would need something extra, some extra education to be able to do that. And that was when I started thinking about, the MBA and the GMAT and all those stuff. And, I got admission into Darden, and I'm currently, I just completed my first year in Darden. And over the summer, I'll be interning in investment banking on the Wall Street. And that's kind of a bit about me.
Yeah. So 2 quick fire question, and I just want you to give me in a sentence between when you first thought about doing an MBA. I'm echoing, and I'm trying to identify what's going on there. Okay. So between when you first thought about doing an MBA and when you traveled, like when you stepped into the plane, how many years was it? Let me start with you, Joseph.
That's an interesting question, like a very, very interesting one. I think when I actively started thinking about it, I'll say that was the beginning of 2016, and I went for my program in August of 2018. So that's about, what would you say now, 24 plus 8 months, or 10 months, like 30 months, or 3 years, that type of thing.
Interesting. Samuel, you?
Yeah, I would say it was 24 months, because when I started thinking about MBA around that time, it was 2017, and around that time, Stanford had this program for Africans. So I attended one of their info sessions, and they mentioned that if you get into the program, there's selected 100 people, they will give you money for the GMAT. So that was my first experience. I wasn't thinking about it seriously. I was kind of in the learning phase. But when I got into the final 100 and they gave me this thing for the GMAT, then I was like, okay, I think it's about time I start taking this thing seriously. So between that and getting admission into that, then it was basically 24 months.
Interesting, because the reason why I asked that question is there are many people looking to apply to MBA programs, and they fail to remember that this is a long-term thing. You don't just wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to business school next year. If you didn't apply in a particular round or start putting your materials together, you might not even get in, even if you're able to throw in an application too. So I'm saying this to encourage those who applied this year and are not going, and encouraging those who are going to be applying next fall to start that process now. My next question is simply around, why did you choose GMAT over GRE? Joseph.
That's an interesting question, right? So after I started, when I was talking about myself, I said I was going to go for a master's at some point. So after I started working at PwC, I think around late 2013, early 2014, I took the GRE. Because I was going to apply to school, and I just got to a point of okay, I'm just going to apply for this master's program. And I checked the requirement. I had to do GRE, so I registered for the GRE exam. I didn't really have time to prepare. But during that experience, I think something that shocked me a lot was, I don't like this exam. The verbal part, if I remember correctly, it tested you a lot on vocabulary. In fact, back then, there was this 800 words you needed to write, to learn. And I was like, no way I'm doing this. I'm an Ibadan boy. I don't have this kind of strong vocabulary. I don't want to ever touch the GRE again if I don't need to. And at the point where I decided to apply for my GMAT, apart from that experience I had with the GRE, at that point it was just everybody talked about the GMAT. When you talk to people, in MBA programs, and talk about writing a standardized test, it's the GMAT. Everybody understands what a 700 score is, or a 640 is, or what it means to get a 7-something or 700 plus. Like, it was so easy. You could go to the website of this schools, and you could see what the average score was. And most of these schools, back then, at least the schools I was looking at, were reporting GMAT scores and not GRE scores. So when you take my dislike for the GRE and the fact that it was just more popular with the schools, compared to that, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do the GMAT. And this is even before understanding what the GMAT was, or before even practicing for the GMAT. It was just, I didn't like it. The schools weren't used to it, so why should I take it? That was my, experience back then. But I think post that, I think I have a better understanding around, what the differences between GMAT and the GRE is. Post that, speaking with people that have done both. So maybe when we get to that question, I can say what I think I know. But why I chose the GMAT over the GRE, that's the story.
Okay.
Yeah. I think my experience was kind of similar to Joseph's. The only thing I knew was GMAT. I knew GRE, but everyone you talk to who was thinking about applying to business school was always talking about GMAT. And so it was kind of what I knew. And around that time, too, I kind of fell a victim to the whole notion that GMAT is for business school and then GRE is for master's programs. But, over the years, I think my perception about it changed a lot. But as at that time, all I knew was GMAT, and the fact that everyone who had attended, business school that I knew wrote GMAT. And that was kind of why I decided to write GMAT too.
The question I was asking is basically around how you guys prepared for GRE, considering the fact that you have work to deal with, pressures from boss and traffic to deal with. I'll let Joseph start that, considering Lagos traffic is a big thing. And then Samuel can chip in with his own perspective on that. I'm sure traffic is big. Maybe traffic is big in Ghana. I'm not sure. But we'll get to that point soon.
Sure thing. Lagos traffic is an interesting one. But at the time I was writing my exam, I was staying like 15 minutes from my office. So I was like not in the traffic zone at all. Like I didn't have to deal with traffic. But that said, how did I prepare for the exam? So, when you asked, when did I start thinking about, or actively thinking about applying for the MBA, was early 2016. So I told myself I was going to apply in September for the first round to the school I wanted to. So that meant I had to write, GMAT before then. So I told myself, because I was writing CFA at that time. So I said, okay, I was going to start preparing for GMAT after the CFA in June. And CFA came, June came, I told myself I'll take 2 weeks and rest. And then September came and I had no applications to submit because I had not written the GMAT. And I still planned on, applying then in 2016. So what I did and what I think works a lot of time, and which would be like my first tip, is once you're thinking about applying for the GMAT, you have to pick a date. Like, just choose a date. Register for the exam. I mean, give yourself time to prepare. But I think until you start to, until you register for the exam, you never really get serious. Just keep talking about it because there's nothing.
Okay, I wanted to show you the.
And the first thing I told myself is I've got 2 months to prepare for this exam because I was going to apply in December for applications early January, which is second round for most school. So I told myself that you've got 2 months to prepare for this and you need to be really consistent and dedicated. So even though I was going to work and I had, good days, some good days where I close early, some bad days where I close very late, you must do 2 hours after work and you must focus on this during the weekend. So it was that consistency, like after work, every time I sit down to do GMAT. Like, I don't leave the office till I'm done with my 2 hours. Like,
sorry, Joseph, maybe you should tell them what you scored, right?
Okay.
So that you can help them put that in perspective as well.
Okay, I mean, I had the 740 in GMAT. I mean, some of that is prep, some of that is luck, but yeah, I had the 740. So if I go back to, how I prepped for it was be consistent with what you do. Like, if you know you don't have time, just get a block of time. Maybe it's in a week, maybe it's in a day, and just tell yourself, I would use, 2 hours after work every day, no matter how hard it is, right? And I did that consistently till I wrote my exam in December. I think the second thing was trying to see where I stood, right, in the GMAT. So prior to even registering for the exam, I didn't know anything about the GMAT. I know people had, registered for it. Tons of people had sent me materials I had not looked at. So I went to GMBA.com, the GMAT guys, and I downloaded the practice exam. And I took a practice test, right, to say, okay, verbal and quant, because I believe, I'm very strong in quant. So verbal and quant, where do I fall? And it just showed me where I was weak. I was really weak in verbal, like seriously weak. So I knew, okay, let me start with verbal. So the first thing I did was like a diagnostic. I did that, did that test and started focusing on verbal and trying to see what's this all about? What do I need to know? What are the rules? What are the I can see a question. I'm getting to that now. What are the rules? What are those things required? So I did a practice test first, and then I started reading the material. And I used to do one practice test every week. Like, it was, practice tests are very silly things to do because they're very, they could be very time consuming and very frustrating. But I did one practice test every week just to say, okay, how good are you with the things you are the things you're looking at? So for the verbal, how better are you trending in your sentence correction, in your critical reasoning, and in your whatever the last thing is called? And just doing those practice tests every week, because I got the GMAT one and I got MGMAT practice test. I think you get about 6 practice tests. So I just kept doing those every week. And the third thing I did was also just mentally trying to see what are those rules that I really don't get. Where do I really make the little mistakes that I make, right? And how can I really watch against those? And which is both for like verbal, when they're just testing parallelism but you don't get it, or they're testing something and you think the sentence doesn't just sound correct. Like, most times you fail questions just because you think, no, that doesn't just look like proper English, and that's the correct answer, because they're testing something you're not used to, right? You're testing a rule that you don't use in everyday conversation. So I used to just look at those and make sure that I'm not making the same mistakes all over again. And I think with those things I used in terms of practice, in terms of materials, I was very focused with the materials I used. So I used only Manhattan GMAT. So I used Manhattan GMAT practice books. What's it called? The volumes. I don't know what they're called actually, but they have these GMAT volumes, and I did the practice, and I used the practice test. Then I had this GMAT Club math book, and those were the materials I used. I have other people that have done different things that I could talk about later on, but that was how I prepped for it. And in 2 months, a day before the exam, I wasn't like I was feeling fantastic, like, oh, I'm going to get a 740. I was like feeling decent, like I think I've got this. And I went to write the exam and I got a 740. I'll probably let us hear Samuel's experience, and maybe I could also chip in more things later.
Yeah, so I mean, that was powerful. 740, man. That's great. Yeah, so for me, I mean, Accra traffic is nothing as compared to Lagos traffic. I've been in Lagos traffic, and trust me, that is crazy. So for me, it was also like right after work, I tried to get in some hours before I would leave, because I knew I was going to spend like a minimum of 1 hour in traffic. So why don't I at least spend that hour on reading some GMAT material? And so I had gathered so many GMAT materials from Manhattan to, a lot of videos. But personally, I deal very well with audiovisual. And so I used most of the videos and kind of verified everything that I was learning with the text. And so the videos were my primary like tools that I was using. And also for me, I realized I was struggling with the verbal a lot, because
sorry to interrupt you. Please, I'll let you continue with your train of thought. When you said audio visuals, I'm sure on the minds of many people they're asking what kind of audio visuals, where did you get them from?
Right. So I had this compiled videos that I took from my previous boss who had left to Yale. I think it was GMAT or something. And the guy had just compiled videos on every GMAT topic. So from integer to sentence correction to everything. He had just done like videos on it. It was like about 20 gig file. And those were the videos that I was using, because at least I could see him working on those things. You know, when you pick the book, one, especially after work, reading becomes very difficult. And it's much easier when you are, watching the person do the thing. And so, like, I was closing from work around like 10 p.m. That's the earliest I was closing. And so I knew reading was going to be very difficult for me. On weekends, I would read, but during the weekdays, I was using the videos, and that was how I got by. I still have the videos if anyone wants them, by the way. So,
oh, great! I'm sure we want them. So you can just help us forward the link to that, Marachi.
Yeah, I'll share the link with you guys, and then you can access them. So those were the materials that I was using, and I realized I was also struggling with the verbal a lot, mainly because most of the sentences didn't make sense. And so after my first GMAT, my second GMAT, I realized, okay, these people are not testing on, what sentence is the sweetest or makes the most sense. They are testing on structure. And that was when I started paying attention to the structure. And so I spent most of my time trying to find the tricks instead of trying to understand or trying to learn English, because it's not really English that they are trying to teach you. They are trying to teach you the tricks in some of those things. And so that was what I spent most of my time doing, like learning the tricks and how to tackle questions. And the thing is, sometimes when I see the question, I don't even try understanding it. I just look for like where there might be some mistakes, where I can find some of the tricks. And that was how I was solving the question. Like trying to understand, especially with sentence correction, trying to understand it was like at the bottom of my to-do things on the sentence. I was always looking for the tricks. And for me, I think that's what helped me, up my scores in the verbal, because that was the thing that I was struggling with the most.
Interesting. So thank you for sharing that. You guys already talked about resources. Joseph, is there a reason why you went with, because there are tons of many resources out there, and I've seen people try to combine. I've seen people try to combine 4 or 5 different resources together. I'll start with you, Joseph. What's your advice on that? And then Samuel, you can take it up from there.
I think it's I don't think there's one surefire way to do it, right? I think it depends on how you best learn stuff. Like I'm that kind of person that I just like simplicity. I just like to use one particular thing and just use that. So when I talked about, writing GMAT, a lot of people, a friend gave me one folder that was prepared by some guy who he never met that went to Yale, who gave it to another guy that went to, this other school, and you just get these things passed down, and you never even know the author of these things. And it had so many materials, and I think the first one I opened was Manhattan, and I just loved it. It just breaks down everything. So at first, Manhattan Prep gives you, and this is not a marketing for, Manhattan Prep. I'm not in any way affiliated with them. So it gives you like an overview of, verbal, an overview of quant at the beginning. So you have one book that tells you everything. So it gives you like an helicopter view of what the GMAT is about in 2 books. And then for each of the component of the exam, of the verbal and the quant, it then has like sub books, which then makes it easier because you can come in and see what is this exam all about? And then you can then go into to see, okay, I want to see particular things. I want to drill down a little bit more into different topics. Okay, I'm fine with maybe algebra. I want to dig into trigonometry or stuff like that. And I really liked, that about the MGMAT, and it just worked for me. So once it worked, I wasn't looking for any other thing. I think when I got the second GMAT material, the math one, was at the point where I wanted to start solving 700 level type of questions. Because on the practice test, I just saw that, I was good with, 500 to 600, 600 to 700, but the 700 to 800 level questions were just very difficult. And that particular material just broke it down a bit more for me. Right?
What's the name of the material again?
It's called GMAT Club Book. It's not even like a real book. It's just
it's a website, isn't it?
No, it's a compilation of different questions. So I mean, I could share it with you at the end of the session. But it was called GMAT Club Book. It's like
would love to have that.
Right, but for me, it just made things easier. It just made me see shortcuts, which wasn't in the MGMAT, in the Manhattan GMAT material that I was using. So I think for me, just to summarize, this was the simplicity, and I wasn't looking for so many. I couldn't just deal with. Like, I never loved videos, so when I saw like GMAT, no offense to Samuel, I just like, I don't want to watch videos. I just want to do 2 hours every day for 2 months, and videos would just take a lot from that. But for other people, some people are just visual people. Once they see stuff, they catch it, and I wasn't just the type of person.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so one thing I would say about the videos is it takes much more time than reading the books, though. So yeah, whoever wants to consider the videos, but for me, it was just because like usually I'll be very tired, but during the weekends, I was using mainly books, and Manhattan was definitely one that I used. So yeah.
So there are 2 questions here, right? Okay, you're saying?
Yeah, no, you can go ahead.
Okay. There are 2 questions I'm going to combine here. One is, what is the mindset that anyone should have about the exam? And the second one is, what are the challenges you faced preparing, and what were the specific things you did to overcome those challenges? And Sam, someone is already asking, I failed to ask for your GMAT score. Even while I answer that question, you might take us down your GMAT GRE journey and let's know that as well. I think it will be really helpful for a lot of people.
Right. So I got 680 in a GMAT, and I got it on my 3rd time. The first time I didn't know any better. I just went to the room with no preparation and I wrote it because I had free money to write it. But the second time was when I started taking it seriously, and then I wrote it a month after I wrote my first time, and then I took 2 months to write the second time. And I think when you're going into, I was actually planning on writing it the 4th time, but I realized there are so many things to MBA applications done. So it was kind of like, okay, let me try with this score, and if it doesn't work, I'll rewrite it, and then it works. That's why I stopped writing it. But going into the exam, the mindset should not, personally for me, it shouldn't be that I have to get the highest score, else I wouldn't apply to business school, right? Like, you should know who you are competing with. I think we touched on it the last time on the webinar. You should know who you are competing with, and the kind of score range that you need to be able to compete within that sector. So for me, the schools that I was applying to, most of them had an average of 720, 715, 730. But I knew, if I get those scores, like I get Joseph's score, 740, that would be ideal. I get my full ride, I'll probably get something more. But if I want to get admission into the school, I really am not competing with everyone in the same bracket. I'm actually competing with people who are coming from my region. And so if I get a score in the upper boundaries of 650, maybe I could get a shot. And that was Like for me, that was what I was targeting. The upper 700 was the ideal situation for me, but I wasn't gonna, kind of